Very quick verdict, actually. After the jury started their deliberations yesterday afternoon at about 3:15, we were taking bets in the press room of when the jury would come back. And I actually bet that it was going to be last night. I think someone owes me lunch for that. But it was a very quick turnaround. They had a couple of notes early in the evening. The judge had said that they could stay if they wanted to and deliberate until 8 p.m. last night. They decided to. They were going to have dinner, get a car, Uber or a lift home, and they submitted a couple of jury notes, asking for highlighters and post-it notes. They also asked for transcripts of certain testimony from institutional investors at FTX. So we thought maybe they might be in for the long haul, but then about 20 minutes to 8 p.m., the 8 p.m. deadline, they came back with another note saying that they'd reached a verdict. It was a little bit frantic in the actual courtroom because people weren't really expecting it at that point. Everyone was sort of moving around, jostling for a seat, and then all the lawyers, the prosecutors, and of course Sam himself and his parents walked in.
What was Sam's reaction when the judge or the jury, I don't know who read this, we don't have cameras in there, you were in there, what was his reaction when he heard the verdict?
Sam was very still when he was sitting at the bar table between his two lawyers. Usually he's sort of bouncing his knee around and you can see him fidgeting a little bit. But last night he was dead still, almost like a statue. The judge asked him to stand and face the jury. The jury four-person read out the guilty verdicts one by one, saying guilty 7 times. He kept his eyes down, looking at the floor most of the time. His hands were in front of him, and he was completely unemotional. He looked stunned, almost a little bit shell-shocked, and before sitting down again. His parents, though, were completely distraught. So they were sitting on the bench in front of me in the courtroom, comforting one another.
I can only imagine.
It was quite difficult.
Stephen, come on in on the conversation. How do you think this trial might potentially impact the crypto market and the interest of it as an investment or means of transaction? What might be a longer term impact, if any?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Carol and Tim. My initial reaction was, we're glad that this is finally behind us because the FTX situation and all the other related issues has had a really broad negative impact on the industry for about the last 18 months. We weren't immune to the damage either, despite not having any kind of relationship to those companies. And now that we finally have a verdict, I feel like investor confidence in the crypto market will start rising again. We're already seeing confidence coming back to the markets. Usually when there's a fraud, it can affect any market segment, but when justice is served, which was served yesterday, and we'll finally get the final verdict later, there's usually a relief, and a relief rally comes with that, and a recognition that the next fraud is going to be harder to pull off, and that criminals will get caught.
Bitcoin's actually down a little bit, about 0.8%. today.
Yeah,
I mean, I know it's one day, but just saying.
Yeah.
Stephen, can you talk a little bit about the damage that you guys experienced as a result of not just this trial, but of the downfall of FTX? You referred to it, but what specifically did you see at Valkyrie?
Yeah, over really the last 2 calendar years, and it didn't start with FTX. It started with Celsius and Voyager, and a couple of other BlockFi is another good example. And then the pinnacle was really FTX. But we really saw less flows coming in, whether it's through ETFs or whether it's through hedge funds that we manage each. So we really did see flows start to dry up. And when the FTX trial started coming around earlier this summer, we did begin to see flows coming back to the market. So it really was a case of investor sentiment saying, I don't want to touch that market for a little bit until we understand really what's going on. Markets like certainty. And I think they wanted to have certainty that it wasn't a crypto problem, rather it was a fraud and criminal problem.
So, all right. So Ava, how are you kind of thinking about the crypto world from a legal perspective. Lionel Laurent has a Bloomberg opinion column out, and he says SBF won't be the last crypto mogul behind bars. So there are other cases in litigation out there.
Yeah, do the Bloomberg quiz this week, Carol.
Oh,
it's a nice hint for a question on there. Okay?
That is very true. So are you anticipating that you're going to get ready for some other, cases to be following?
Yes, definitely. In federal court in Manhattan, the prosecution office down here has made a big point of saying, just because this was crypto and it was a new technology, a new market, the fraud is the same. It doesn't matter what the vehicle is that's being used to perpetuate this fraud. So FTX was one of many crypto companies that the prosecution office went after. We're also waiting to see what happens with Alex Mashinsky, who was the founder of Celsius, Do Kwon, who was the founder of Terraform Labs. So it'll be interesting to see, I guess, if you can take any lessons from what happened with FTX. Obviously, there was a lot of evidence in this case, and the prosecution was really blessed with having 3 insiders from Sam Bankman-Fried's inner circle turning around and agreeing to be cooperating witnesses for them.
So what happens to them, Ava?
They will be sentenced. They've sort of done their bit for the government, and the judge will weigh up just how valuable they were. And then determine what their punishment would be. Those executives, just to refresh everyone's memories, were Gary Wong, the co-founder of FTX, Caroline Ellison, who is the CEO of Alameda Research, and Nishad Singh, who was the engineering chief at FTX. They all had cooperation agreements with the government and gave evidence. And they were saying, we're hoping we don't get jail time from this. So we'll have to wait and see.
Stephen, got about a minute left here. What would you like to see in terms of government oversight or rules or greater transparency in the crypto world?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily an issue with crypto. And I also don't know if there's necessarily, investor protections, additional investor protections that need to take place here. The bottom line is sophisticated investors were fooled here. We just happened to be fortunate enough to have a really stubborn and risk-focused team when we were engaging with counterparties like Celsius and FTX, and decided not to engage with them because they didn't fulfill our process of due diligence. And I think what happened is, anytime that there's a new market and there's hype around that market and people making money, it does create a bit of FOMO, and people forget their process. People forget their past learnings, whether it was learnings from Enron or learnings from Madoff. I mean, I was a credit analyst looking at Greece when the Greek debt crisis came about, and avoided it. So we avoided these issues, and I think people just have to remember that you follow a process, you do your due diligence, and you make sure that you mitigate risk.